All right, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to be a part of this year's third Pollution Prevention webinar. This webinar is being put on by the Tennessee Pollution Prevention Program in collaboration with Three Rivers Energy Partners, Bush Brothers and Company, and Brown and Caldwell Environmental Engineering. So very excited for the presentations we got going on today, but had a chance to sit and talk with our presenters this week, and excited to listen to the presentations they've got going on and the projects that they're working on. Just a little bit of back of house things we need to go over. Everyone is muted upon entry to reduce the amount of background noise, but if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to ask those in the chat box, and I'll work on getting those answered or you helped out there. And that's one of the biggest benefits, in my opinion, on having a live webinar is when you hear this information and the questions come up, you can actually ask the individuals that are working on these types of projects and get real-time answers. So don't be scared of the chat box. I'm actually sending a chat right now to everybody. Now, there is a drop-down on who you send it to. Now, just make sure that the word all or the word host is in one of those selections that you make, so that I will receive that. I'm going to be watching that chat box for our presenters and asking those questions at the end. Now, just to give an overview of what's going to be covered today, the webinar today will be exploring the fascinating world of anaerobic digestion, featuring esteemed speakers from Bush Brothers Beans of Knoxville, Three Rivers Energy Partners, and Brown and Caldwell Environmental Engineering. So today we are going to be diving into the innovative applications of anaerobic digestion as the Bush Brothers Beans representatives shed light on the technology's pivotal role within their manufacturing process. And then meanwhile, we're also going to be planning on gaining invaluable insight from Three Rivers Energy Partners as we examine compelling case studies from their work on the Jack Daniels and Jim Beam renewable natural gas projects. So we hope that the presentations today will provide the opportunity for you to expand your knowledge and discover the potential of anaerobic digestion in real-world scenarios. So before I introduce our awesome speakers, we like to, let's see here, get a full screen. I'm going to share my screen. We'd like to ask a couple questions for our audience to see, just give us an idea of the initial knowledge that you have on some of the topics that we're going to be covering today. And then at the end of the webinar, we're going to be asking those same questions on how knowledgeable you feel on these topics, hoping that you learn something. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen. Everyone should see this right here. You can pull your phone out and just scan that QR code right there. Or if you don't have your phone, or you'd rather just type in menti.com, either in your computer or on your phone, and then you're going to use that code on the top, 8160-7396. I'm going to pull that up on my phone as well, make sure everything's working. But if you guys wouldn't mind pulling that up, and then we are going to ask the same question for 4 different topics. So basically, I feel knowledgeable about the following topics, and that first one is anaerobic digestion. Process water recovery is the second one, renewable natural gas, and then to finish out, regenerative agricultural processes or practices. So when you're done with that, please submit that. We're going to give a little bit of time. And like I mentioned before, this just sort of helps us see where our audience is with their knowledge on these topics, and then at the end, hoping that the score will be a little bit higher, meaning that you learn something from our awesome speakers. All right, we've got about 13 people that have answered. I'm going to give it about 20, 30 more seconds. I know sometimes technology doesn't want to work when you're using these QR codes or having to type in the code. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody that answered, and if you're still working on that, still actually keep moving forward and giving your answers. I'm just going to stop sharing the screen so we're not able to see it, but it'll still hold on those answers. So, all right. Okie dokie. So our speakers today, I'm going to just give a brief overview of all four of our speakers, and then I'm going to let them talk a little bit more about themselves and how they got to where they are today, and then jumping into their presentations. So we have Rich Clark, and I'll actually just go ahead and move on to this one. We got Rich Clark. He's the Engineering Services Manager at Bush's. We've got Terry Dockery, Site Utilities Manager at Bush's. Jason Mullen, Vice President of Brown and Caldwell Environmental Engineering, working with the guys at Bush's. And then we have Lewis Buck, Senior Vice President of Public Affairs for Three Rivers Energy Partners. So without further ado, I'm going to mute myself. I know I've talked enough, and I'm going to throw it over to, I guess, you, Rich, and let you guys get started.
Yeah, well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rich Clark with Bush Brothers. As Caleb said, I'm the Engineering Services Manager here. And really just kind of kicking off, so I've been with Bush Brothers. This is year 26. Not a long intro, but just in various engineering roles, been doing things here at our Chestnut Hill facility, which is right outside of Dandridge, Tennessee, which is our largest facility. And then I've spent some time in our corporate office doing some larger capital projects, and also some new product and new business development things over the years. So that's just a little intro on me, and I'm going to pass it over to Terry.
You might be muted, Terry.
You can go ahead to the next slide, Caleb.
Okie dokie.
You want to cover that one, Rich?
Yeah, I can dive into that. So just a little bit of background on Bush Brothers. Folks see Bush Brothers and Company a lot of times. They don't know what that kind of is all about until they see the Bush shield, and then most folks will recognize us as the folks who make baked beans. And I've seen the commercials with Jay and Duke, and you can see that there. So still family owned, started in 1908. Kind of the birthplace of the company was right here in Chestnut Hill, Tennessee, which is where our largest manufacturing site is still at, and you'll see the visitor center there, which is really good if folks want to visit. It has a lot of interactive things. Great short video there about how we do what we do and putting beans and sauce in cans and making baked beans. We do have two manufacturing facilities. Obviously, the one in Tennessee. We have another one in Augusta, Wisconsin. Overall, we have about 800 employees company-wide between Chestnut Hill, Knoxville, which is where our corporate office is, and then Knoxville, Chestnut Hill, and then Augusta, Wisconsin. And then so here at Chestnut Hill, we have about 400 folks. Really the focus culture-wise here, we call it a high-row culture. So it's highly involved, results-oriented. Basically, team-based, collaborative. That's what we try to be all about, living into our core values. And that statement there of doing the right things for the right reasons, kind of resonates through all that we do. We are a national brand. We are a category leader in prepared beans. And just in the last year or two, we did top $1 billion in gross sales, which was a big milestone for the company. So just a little bit of background on us. We're not going to dwell on that today. We're gonna really focus on more about our what we call the PWRF, or our process water recovery system and facility. So you can go ahead to the next one. So just a little background. The picture there, you can see the manufacturing plant in the background. The foreground was our new PWRF facility. So, you know, that's been quite a while now. I guess 10 years, you know, had started that journey with Brown and Caldwell and a number of folks on the internal Bush team. Started with the design. That all came to fruition around the fall of 2017 when we put that system online and decommissioned our old treatment facility. And this one, you know, is designed and capable of doing up to 2.5 million gallons per day of treating our waste stream. So you can go ahead to the next one, and then Doc's going to kind of take over. He's the one who runs this system every day, you know, manages all of our site utilities, but this is obviously a big part of that. And between him and Jason are going to kind of walk through the system and share a lot of the details that go into that.
We know the focus and the interest for this webinar is anaerobic digestion, but we'll give you a rather quick overview of the whole treatment process so you can at least see how anaerobic digestion fits into the whole system. Probably the first thing I need to tell you is this treatment system and the waste stream is truly processed water waste. There is no human waste or sanitary waste in it. That's a completely separate stream that goes to a recirculating sand filter that we're permitted to operate and run. If you're going to try to do reuse or processed water recovery, that's a big thing to keep in mind. So quickly going through the process, we've got the manufacturing plant, the waste stream from there, which is primarily split beans or waste beans. It's sauce, it's brine water, it's cleaning water. Gravity flows to a wet well. We pump from the wet well through stationary screens to separate the solids and the liquids, or the beans from the liquid. The beans go into a dump truck. Bush owns and operates a feedlot facility, got a herd of cattle in a neighboring county. And so they take the beans and put them in a mixed truck and add some silage and some hay and use that as cattle food. And there is a secret family recipe for that, and we won't tell that either. You'll see land application on the field, but we'll come back to that towards the end. The next step is equalization tanks. And I'll go ahead and say all of the tanks that we're going to talk about and you're going to see are glass line tanks to help prevent corrosion. Equalization tanks, I describe them as blenders. They have jet mixers in them, and their purpose is to blend up the waste stream, which ours can vary drastically depending on the product we're running, and create a consistent waste stream, or consistent strength waste stream as it enters the next step of the process. From the anaerobic contact tanks, we go to DAFs, or dissolved air flotation tanks, and these tanks basically are just saturating the water with so much air that the particles will float to the top. We add a polymer to help those small particles cling together, and we're skimming the waste or the sludge off the top. That goes to a sludge holding tank, which we'll talk about more shortly. Next treatment step is a BioP tank for removing phosphates. Then we've got a Knoxville for nitrates. We've got 2 aeration tanks, which is just opposite of anaerobic. Then we've got an MBR, or membrane bioreactor tank, which is basically a really good filter. Permeate tank, so the treated water coming from the MBR goes to a tank. We use a portion of that water. It gets additional step of the treatment. It gets treated by RO unit, and then we use some of that water as for coolant towers and heat exchangers and boiler feed water, and they're all non-food contact applications. We have 5 750 horsepower fire tube boilers, and at peak biogas demand, we'll get enough biogas to run about 80%, supply about 80% of fuel we need for one of those boilers. I think the next one, we have a picture of equalization tanks. I've kind of already described those. They're low maintenance. You just basically got the mixers. On the next slide, you'll see the building to the right is basically chemical storage. Our biogas compressor is in that building. We have a biological scrubber that removes the H2S from the biogas because it's highly corrosive. You can't see the picture, but it's on the other end of that building. And then beside the building, you can see the 2 anaerobic contact tanks. And again, the purpose of the anaerobic contact tanks is to convert organic material to biogas through a chemical reaction. And there may be more questions on that, but we'll get through this. So if there are more questions, Jason Mullen can get in far deeper detail than I can. That's just a view from the top of the anaerobic contact tanks. They're low pressure vessel tanks, so you see the pressure relief valves. The biogas collects in the top of these tanks, and then pressure pushes it over to our scrubber and then through our biogas compressor. And we do have a closed handle flare so that if we're not running the boilers or if we can't make biogas or compress it, we can flare the gas off, and that's part of our emissions permit. Next, we're going to be looking at dissolved air flotation tank. It's somewhat a costly step because of the polymers. Polymer's expensive. This sludge that we're skimming off, the sludge holding tank I explained, goes to the sludge holding tank, and well, I'm getting out of order. Let's go to the next slide, Caleb. There's a sludge holding tank and another picture of the screw presses. Bio-P and an oxygen tank, and you can see the gallons or the sizes. Next, we have looking at the top of the aeration tanks. So we have 3 500 horsepower boilers or 500 horsepower blowers to supply air to saturate these tanks with air. We usually only run one, about half of the capacity we have. So we intentionally build a lot of redundancy into this facility. But the sludge from this thing overflows as well and goes to the sludge holding tank. Membrane bioreactor, or MBR, there are 15 cartridges. So there's 3 sections with 5 cartridges in each section. And if you go as far as filter size, if you go to Lowe's or Home Depot and purchase a whole home filter, the smallest you'll find would probably be about 10 micron, and this is a 0.03 micron, and it will take out some forms or strains of bacteria and viruses. Next, we have our permeate and reuse pumps. So whatever water is needed for coolant towers, heat exchangers, and boiler feed waters gets pumped out of that tank to those areas. Anything that's not used goes to overflows the tank and goes to a lagoon, which we'll be looking at in a minute. Next, we have our biogas. Sorry, that's yours, Jason. I might have done. Go ahead, Jason.
No problem. Jason Mullen, Brown & Caldwell. Brown & Caldwell designs some of the largest municipal plants in the country, but I work on just private sector stuff in industrial wastewater. So I'm exclusively industrial wastewater. Been working for Bush for over 10 years. We designed a system starting with treatability study done in our Nashville lab. Where, hold on, here I am. We can test a small system in our lab. We started that back with Bush, probably 2012, looking at what it takes to treat the water, and we got to the system we have. As Doc says, the compression is a big part of it, because they've always, in their previous system, they always had gas going to the boilers, and so we wanted to maintain that. And so this system still has the gas going to the boilers. We have to now compress it more and pump it farther, because the PWRF is separated from the production facility by a new highway. So we actually have the wastewater plant on one side of the highway, so we're compressing it underground and over to the new plant. Again, it goes to a biological scrubber, a POX scrubber, that converts it from hydrogen sulfide to sulfide, elemental sulfide, and that drops the sulfur out. It's a very efficient way to pull out the sulfur, scrub it first. Good. Next. So the lagoon, Doc was going to mention this water. This is the effluent from the MBR, the filter. They put in this lagoon 3.5 million gallons, and they can transfer this to their farm fields. They operate, I'm not sure how many, Doc, many farm fields around the area they land irrigate the water onto.
Approximately 700 acres we irrigate on.
Yeah.
Jason, I got carried away and went right through the ACTs, and that was your slide. Why don't you, and this is the topic, say anything you want to say about the anaerobic digestion?
Yeah, sure. Caleb, would you back up, please? One more there, a couple more. Yeah, there you go. The ACT tanks, the anaerobic contact tanks, and they're completely started tanks. There's just jet mixers in there. There's nothing else in there. And they're very large. They're 2.5 million gallons apiece. The reason they're so large is because, as I alluded to earlier, the waste load can vary a lot. It can almost double here within a week. And so that's the reason you've got to build it so large, to be able to handle that sustained high load. Again, these are glass-lined tanks. They operate they can maintain about 6 inches of water pressure on the tanks. And again, they're very large. They're probably the largest tanks of their size in the country when it was built. Like these, so they're pretty good sized vehicles. So, next one. The DAF is Doc went through. Doc's gone through this already. I'm just going to go through the high points. The sludge in here is very stable, and this is a sludge. These are two 600 square foot DAFs, and this is what goes to the screw presses. So at this point, the sludge is very stable. It goes right to screw presses, and you can use this sludge. And they will be using it for beneficial reuse at some point. You can make it a soil additive or fertilizer. And then from here, the water goes to the aerobic system. The next slide. And we talked about this before. On to the next one, Caleb. Bio-P tanks, this is very similar to the BNR process in municipal. This is where the phosphate gets removed in the Bio-P tank, and the extra nitrate gets removed in an oxygen tank. So this is great to point out all the nitrates you're making, all the Bio-P, all the P you're making. This is an important step before the MBR to fully polish the water. We worked with TDEC for several years before we built the plant to get it to as clean as we can get it, so that when we spray the water on the ground, it's basically clean water. So the effluent coming out here is as clean as you're going to get it. Next. Aeration tanks, you know, there's nothing special here. It goes to the MBR. Again, there's two 1 million gallon tanks. You could run with one if you had to. In other words, you can basically turn one offline and double the load in the other one, and it's got a lot of redundancy built into the system. So, next go. Let's go on through these slides. We've already talked about them. Go to the next one, if you don't mind. So, again, you see here the facility. We're standing on one of the anaerobic tanks now, looking across the highway. What road is it, Doc?
Highway 411.
Highway 411 cuts between the plant and the production plant. So the wastewater gets pumped from that factory in the background under the roadway through a pipe chase to our facility, and then our effluent pumps back over there to the same pipe chase, along with the biogas goes over there as well. So if you're driving through the area from Gatlinburg to the highway to the 40, you'll drive factory on one side and wastewater plant on the other. But luckily we knew that was going to happen when we designed it, so we designed around it.
It appears I failed to include a picture of our screw presses, but we have two screw presses, so that sludge holding tank I referred to, when it gets a certain level, we pump it out, pump it to the screw presses out of polymer, and it'll come out at a consistency such that it'll pass a paint filter test, which is what's required for municipalities and people to put this waste in a landfill. But the interesting thing on that is TDEC has a beneficial reuse program, and Brown and Caldwell is working with them on our behalf to get a permit for that program, which would allow us to use land apply that sludge on bush farmland as fertilizer, or give it away to local farmers for fertilizer. And then last but not least, I can think of on the biogas, to give you an idea of the energy, natural gas is 1,000 BTU a cubic foot, and our biogas averages about 749 BTU a cubic foot. So it's about 75 of the strength, but it still burns good. That's all I have, Richard or Jason.
Yeah, so if anybody has any questions for these guys, I mean, I know there's a lot of information. Feel free to send those. Actually, here's a question right now. Says, have there been any challenges maintaining the biological community needed for the anaerobic processes?
Well, you know, startup was a little bit slow because we started out with a pretty small amount of bugs that we brought in. And so they ramped up over time, but there really wasn't any challenges once they got growing. Now, many food plants will have sanitizers that will knock them back real easy. But Bush doesn't operate with those sanitizers. So they do CIPs every day, but those sanitizers do not affect the bugs. And so really, I'm not aware of any challenges in growing bugs.
Yeah, there's actually quite a few questions that have came in, but I want to be cognizant of our other speaker and let him be able to do his presentation, and then I'll make sure that these questions get asked to you guys once he's done with his presentation. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for the presentation and the information, and like I said, we'll get to these other questions that have been sent in towards the end of the presentation. So I want to send it on over to you, Louis. like I mentioned before, the Senior Vice President of Public Affairs for Three Rivers Energy Partners. So I want to talk about the case studies and the projects that you guys have going on with Jim Beam and Jack Daniels with their renewable natural gas projects. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Caleb. Let's go ahead to the next slide. Appreciate the opportunity to be on the webinar today and all the interest. In the interest of time, I will more or less compare and contrast with what we just heard at Bush Beans. We're very similar. I have a couple of videos, but a little bit about my background. I was a Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Agriculture during the Sunquist administration for those in Tennessee. Senior civil engineer at TVA. I was a chief hydrologist when I left, so I'm an environmental engineer background, and since my political days have been doing project finance and project development, and I'm pleased to work with Three Rivers. We're the Three Rivers Energy Partners out of Michigan, not the Three Rivers Energy out of Ohio, if you Google us. Next slide, please, Caleb. Our founders are from the oil and gas business. They pumped around a lot of produce water in the frac gas fields for clients, including major oil and energy companies here in the Balkans. When we approach clients, we try to identify what problem are we solving. For both of these clients, they were looking to expand and significant expansions of their distilleries. We drank a lot of booze during COVID because both distilleries were significantly expanding coming out of the COVID period. And they want to do that in a sustainable way. Both distilleries needed more natural gas, which was not available in the pipelines that served them. And they needed to deal with all the co-products and everything around that expansion in a sustainable way. So that's specifically where we plugged in. We bring all of our private money. Both of these projects are roughly $100 million each. So we fund our part of it. So we develop green energy projects and help those companies transition to more renewable energy. And as I've said, we try to understand very closely. Unlike Bush Beans, to compare and contrast, Jack Daniels and Jim Beam will send us hot stillage as our feedstock in a pipe, and we'll send natural gas back to them. So the project reduces their energy usage, particularly at Jim Beam, where they're taking their dry house offline, but improve the CI score. And because there's less business risk, particularly in where the stillage goes, it's currently at Jack Daniels, leaving on trucks, just whole stillage called slop locally. A lot of water in that, and you can only drive a truck to cattle feedlots so far. Our contracts will get some of that, not all of it. Next slide, please, Caleb. These are significant projects. They're both about 1 million decatherms of RNG a year because these are co-products, food waste, if you will. We make our money off the green attributes from the natural gas. Unlike Bush Beans, our particle size is very small. It's coming straight out of the distilleries hot. So we actually have chillers and have blend in the hot stillage with our tanks to maintain the target temperatures we want. And guys, we're mesophilic on both of these. But we have to let it cool down, which is a little bit different in a digester plant without adding any additional heat. We explored all of the solid separations, both chemically and mechanically, but our D90 particle size is 575 microns, so we're essentially pretty small. And everything we looked at, we decided to build a pipeline to cornfields. If you're familiar with the Lynchburg area, we're building a pipeline over time to Franklin County. And we'll need about 20,000 acres of cropland when we get there. So that's one difference. We're not, we're calling it fertilizer, putting a label on it under the Department of Agriculture and selling it at deep discount, admittedly, but selling it to the farmers. And both distilleries are committed to buy back as much of the corn grown with the stillage fertilizer as practical. And you can see the other greenhouse productions as we shift from Jim Beam still burned a lot of coal to heat up their boilers, so significant savings there. And because this is a natural fertilizer, in some cases it can be organic fertilizer, so it creates a lot of rural economic development opportunities. We will sell the fertilizer at a 50% discount to the marketplace. And again, there's opportunities to sell that corn right back to the distilleries, which gets the farmers the best price. Slide, Caleb. I'll play a video soon, but here's a shot, fairly recent. The tanks look similar. We get about 500,000 gallons a day from the Jack Daniel's distillery. You'll see, a little hard to see, but on the far right picture in the back is a 30 million gallon holding pond. So we'll have a buffer tank, 2 trains, some primary digesters. These are, if I recall, 65 foot, 65 feet high, continuous stir, mechanical stir, not the jets. And then we have what we consider a dairy digester covered pond in the back. It's also where we go if we have an upset digester, and it really gets us a stable product headed down the pipeline for crop fields. The drone shot in the middle is our biomass cleanup, our biogas upgrading facility. We're working with BioFirm out of Wisconsin on this project. We're working with Hitachi, based here in Knoxville, Tennessee, on our Jim Beam project. Let's go to the next slide, Caleb, which is another quick view. Very similar design. We're across the road from the Booker Knoll Distillery up in Kentucky, but since this is a Tennessee group, let's go ahead and play the video. We were fortunately to be selected by the Ted Danson show on Bloomberg. So Ted Danson has, the TV actor, has a innovation in science show. This is a less than 6-minute video that I think will give you a better overview of what we're doing at Jim Beam than I can talking through it. So let's get that video up, the Ted Danson video. Here we go.
Driving businesses towards change, with many organizations looking to renewable natural gas, or RNG, to fuel them forward. Renewable natural gas is biogas
with regenerative agriculture in a very responsible way to just build that momentum, and it really is leading the industry in a lot of ways to show others how to do it. Thank you. There you go, Caleb. And let's stay right there a minute. Just in general, one of the things that makes this project in Three Rivers different, we don't see this. We have our money into these projects. Again, there's Jack Daniels pumps it to us. We do our thing, make our money, make our investors and bankers happy, send the commodity natural gas back to Jack Daniels and Jim Beam for their uses, and market the green attributes because this is renewable. And then the whole digestated fertilizer we send to the crop fields, which is a big undertaking. But again, because our roots and our founders were in the pipeline business, which has its own challenges, admittedly, but that's our intention here. So we do this for a profit. Renewable natural gas has a nice market. We do a lot of business with entities out of Japan, particularly, because Tennessee does a lot of business with Japan, but we do this completely for a profit and are private financed. Let's go to back to the PowerPoint real quick. We did question on regenerative ag. Next slide. This digestate, again, corn in, pretty good corn fertilizer out, but it can go on forage land. We have because the corn kernel that comes to the distilleries is fairly balanced in the amount of nitrogen, PK, all the way down to sulfur and zinc that the corn needed out of the ground. We get those all those nutrients back. We change the organic matter into ammonical nitrogen, so we have more plant availability than like a manure product would be. So we have, as our Brown and Caldwell guys would tell you, we're high in organic. We convert that organic nitrogen that was in the corn stillage into ammonical nitrogen, send that out. I will show you, it's only a 30-second video. We have a strategic relationship with a fairly new company that builds. Okay, give me a minute and then we'll hit play. This was the last piece of our puzzle. So at the end of our pipelines, we will do temporary lay flat pipe. This piece of equipment is autonomous, which means we capture the GPS, GIS patterns off of the corn planter, and then we can download it into this machine, which runs day and night, 60-foot booms you're looking at. It lays down that hose reel. It's a 3,000-foot reel. It goes down with the center of the boom turned off so that the wheels are always in dry tracks. Reverses, picks up that reel, fertigates the middle section of the boom. The computer moves it over. It goes back and forth day and night. So let's play the video to give a sense of how we intend to land apply this digestated fertilizer. Thanks, Caitlin. Back to PowerPoint. So again, there was a manure manifold on here. We do have some recalcitrant fiber from the corn left in our digestate. We went ahead and got those on it, but we don't, again, we don't have much fiber. We do deliver some organic matter, which is beneficial to the crops. Because this is digestated, it has a higher pH than commercial fertilizer. So over time, we would see minor liming effects. We're very good for soil health. We do give back, as I said, some of the organic matter that's in the product. Those are 1-inch drop lines. So because For corn fertilization, the machine will do about 7,000 gallons an acre. So that's the big challenge here, and this machine's critical to our strategy. So we're flooding the root zone and the growing crop, so we're confident, and all of our consultants and vendors as well, that that ammonia will go straight to those roots and boost that crop. So that's a big piece of the puzzle. We're buying about all they can make for these two projects, and that's what it'll be at the end of our pipelines. We have that in that 7,000 gallons an acre, we essentially offset all the fertilizer, although you can buy liquid fertilizers commercially, plumb them into our pumping skids and polish off our digestate if you want a little more potash or a little more nitrogen, a little more sulfur, whatever it might be. One of the interesting things for this crowd is farmers now pay for sulfur because we don't get it free from acid rain anymore because we're burning less coal. So sulfur is now, we used to say NP and K, we now say NPK and S. So sulfur is a micronutrient that's expensive and the farmers are having to buy it. So that's one of the big advantages of what we're doing. We're recovering some of that sulfur. During the COVID year with disrupted supply chains, they couldn't get sulfur, and some grew different crops in corn simply because they could not buy the sulfur. There's just more on the Rain 360. In the interest of time, let's just keep rolling, Caleb. What's nice about it, it can also be used in the summer for irrigation. It will achieve the same irrigation benefits as center pivot with about half the water. And because we can program it, it can walk on our irregular shaped fields. So we can bring what I like to say fertigation to a lot more Tennessee and Kentucky crop fields, a lot smaller acreage. So our farmers are pretty excited about discounted fertilizer and access to this piece of equipment to boost their yields and profit. Let's go slide. Real quick, next. We're working with some of the best people in the industry. That's Mitsubishi out of Japan, and Wall Street's our primary finance partner. Some of our consultants there, Biofirm in Lynchburg, Hitachi in Bluegrass or in Kentucky. Slide. We were pleased to, we were the ESG, Environment, Social, and Governance, out of 300 candidates. We were the #1 project in North America, at least by this IJ Global Awards last year for our Jack Daniels project. So we're proud of that recognition. Some of the biggest regenerative natural gas as well as regenerative ag projects in the world, these two, and Beam's a little bit bigger than Jack Daniels. Last slide. So in summary, leave a little bit of time for questions. We created a renewable energy source to allow Jack Daniels to grow. They had about 30 days, 35 days of when they didn't have enough gas, and they curtailed operations in the Lynchburg area. They had a choice of firing their boilers or their neighbors getting cold. There literally was not enough natural gas in the infrastructure, and that's not uncommon more and more in Tennessee to not have enough energy infrastructure. It reduces carbon emissions, it improves watershed management. Again, we're processing that stillage. Not all of it will go to cattle feedlots. Some of it will come to us and be put on new ground farther away than the current than the current cattle feeding regime that TDEC knows about, and we've worked with them on. We've talked about regenerative agriculture, but because this is a low carbon natural fertilizer, anything you grow with it can be marketed in a different way. So we have the opportunities to work with the community. We're working with a watercress farm down there as well and some sod farms, but we can use this fertilizer in a lot of different ways and add value to the community. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Happy to take your questions. Thank you, Caleb.
Yeah, thanks, Lewis. It's so interesting getting to talk to amazing speakers that have so much information. I know there's a lot of information given by these two or these four guys, but these two groups. I actually do have quite a bit of questions for you guys, so we're gonna jump right into those. Let's see. This is gonna be for the bush beans guys. So we already covered the biological community needed for the anaerobic processes, but there was some add-ons to that question. It says, is there much variability in the composition of the process water? You guys are all muted if you're trying to talk.
Yeah, this is Jason Mullins from Caldwell. I would say there's not. I mean, there's a lot of variability in the influence, but after it goes to digestion and polishing and aerobic, the water is pretty consistent coming out. Pretty consistent.
I agree.
Good to hear.
Just as Mr. Buck said, the minerals will go straight through and they go out on our fields as well.
There's a second question after that one that says, have there been any challenges with temperature fluctuations affecting biological performance?
No, we have a wet surface air heat exchanger, and during the hottest months of the year, we run it to control the temperature in ACTs, but it only runs about 3-4 months out of the year. When we built the facility, we installed steam generators, thinking we might need to heat the ACTs, but we had one winter, the plant was shut down for 10 days. It didn't get above 25 for 3 weeks, and we still maintained temperature within range on the ACTs. So after a few more years, we sold those units, and we just didn't need them.
Good deal. Let's see. And then there was one last question that I think came in for you guys. It says, has a payback been calculated, I guess, for the entire system? I think that's maybe what the question was asking.
I'll go first. Again, we do this as a private sector. There's no subsidies. We don't play the renewable natural gas market in California that a lot of the dairy farms and livestock do. So we sell our renewable attributes. I like to say our green paper, the renewable part of the methane. The molecule is the same. The commodity gas goes in the pipeline, and it's used by whoever. We have a contract for that. We have a voluntary market. And we're taking a deep discount on the spot market for renewable natural gas because they're long-term 20-year contracts. So except for one little tax credit to build this thing, we're all private sector, and we have returns and paybacks like Wall Street would expect.
As far as Bush goes, the PWRF was built really. The intent was to get the water as clean as we could get it going out on these fields. I mean, we know how much we save in natural gas by sending biogas to the boiler. Prior to building this facility, we talked to our closest local utility about sending our waste to them. And at the end of the day, we're going to have to pay for the lines and the pump stations. We were going to have to keep doing pre-treatment, which means keep running the old system we have, and then the fee from those folks would be between $1 million and $1.5 million a year more. So for the autonomy of it and controlling their own destiny, Bush elected to build their own facility.
And they also operate a profitable cattle facility, and profitable cattle facility is something to be said. I've done it before, so. They actually make money on raising grass on that fertilizer and raising cattle. So that is a positive as well.
Yeah, definitely. Here's some questions that came in for you, Lewis. But if the Bush team's got any additional answers to these as well, feel free to chime in. It says, can you speak a little bit more about the strategies for stabilizing the feedstock going into the digester?
We're very fortunate. If you think about it, the reason we like this space, both Jack Daniels and Jim Beam are very, very careful for their recipe that goes in the bottle not to change. We have very, very consistent feedstock coming from the digesters to us. We don't mix it with anything. We know there'll be some challenges in operational with a single substrate, but our feedstock I can't imagine a feedstock that would be more consistent at temperature and makeup than it's corn, barley, and rye, and they've been doing it the same way for a long time. And all of our testing shows a very consistent feedstock on the front end.
This follow-up question, well, I guess it's just a whole different question, but it says, how long did it take to plan and implement this entire process for each facility? The example, like technical design, evaluating, identifying the market for the fertilizer, building, etc.
I'll go first. We started talking about the concept that we built at Jack Daniels in 2018. Once we did the business, who to pay for it, whether we would go for fertilizer instead of a water treatment plant, we simply did not have the water. You know, it's a little creek. Mulberry Creek in Lynchburg is not very big, and they had their water treatment plant on it. So once we kind of got to the concept that we would need to call it fertilizer and do a pipeline to cornfields, from getting to finance to cutting, we have an 18-month construction period, and Jim Beam was quicker, and the other projects we're working with on this same template or model, we basically get them done in 2 years with an 18-month construction period.
Right, on our system, we started making drawings in early 2015, but our conversations with TDEC and the state happened earlier than that, talking about what the plan was going to be, how to apply the land, what the concentration need to be to get to. So, but again, we started design drawings in 15 and started up in 17, late 17.
Good deal. And there was one more question. I want to be able to get to our Mentimeter questions to follow up with the audience. But there was one more question I wanted to get asked. It says, about how much diesel does the 360 Rain use to run 24 hours? Are there any products coming down the line that could be electric or more efficient?
It's a 300-gallon tank, and it burns a half a gallon an hour, so it's a very efficient burn. It makes DC power online, so we avoid the need for three-phase power like a lot of center pivot and irrigation. So we like it because it's all on board, and it's a very efficient diesel because it's like a train. It's just using the diesel to make the electricity to drive the wheels and pumps and to run all the electronics. I want to say it's a half a gallon an hour is the burn rate on a 300-gallon tank.
Awesome. All right, so if everyone will go back to, let me share my desktop. We're going to go back to your Mentimeter where you, and if you have got rid of that page, feel free to do the QR code again, but want to just ask this question again. As a result of this webinar, how do you feel? Do you feel more knowledgeable about all the 4 different topics that were covered? We hope that the answer is yes, but please answer truthfully. I'll give everybody about a minute or two to answer these questions. While that's going on, I just wanted to really thank all you gentlemen for taking the time to talk about your projects and talk about your processes and how anaerobic digestion can really increase not only just help with waste and help with your but processing your water and then actually also create fertilizer and other type of businesses like the cattle operation and things like that. So wanted to thank you guys for your time. If there is any more questions that you guys in the audience didn't get to ask, I'm sure that these gentlemen would be happy to answer those questions later on. Feel free, you should have my email, caleb.powell@tn.gov. Feel free to send me any questions that you might have that you didn't get to ask or that weren't answered for you, or if you're eating dinner tonight and you're like, man, I wish I would have asked this question. Feel free to shoot me an email. I can work with these guys to get those answers for you Be on the lookout. There will be a follow-up email sent out later this week or early next week that will have the recording link to this webinar, and then it will also have the slides and some more of the information that we talked about. I'm going to stop sharing this now. Go back to our slide. Once again, thank you guys for everything. We couldn't have these pollution prevention webinars without amazing speakers and good content, and we also, on the other side of things, there wouldn't be any need for them if we didn't have audience members that are interested in these topics. So really appreciate all the work that you guys do. Really appreciate everyone joining on. Be on the lookout. In that follow-up email, we will be sending information about our final pollution prevention webinar for this year, and also for our in-person workshops that we're going to be having towards the end of the summer. So I'll be sending registration for that. We're going to be having one workshop at the front end of our Tennessee Sustainability Conference in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. It's going to be a really fun week of learning, networking, and now it gives everyone the opportunity to go to the workshop before that conference starts. So we're in the works for the other workshop, but it's going to be hopefully at one of our Tennessee Green Star partners manufacturing facilities. So there's an opportunity there to see a peer facility, the things that they've got going on, and just get to be with your. Oh, and I just got some information that it is going to be at American Snuff in Clarksville. I knew that's where we were trying to. I just didn't know if we had confirmation yet. So be on the lookout for the registration for all of those. There's a lot of stuff coming down the pike, and we really appreciate everybody's availability and eagerness to be a part of our pollution prevention program. Everyone have a great week.
Thank you, Caleb.